They said humans were weak, emotional, slow to learn, quick to fight, and always breaking what they built. Across the stars, many civilizations agreed that Earth's people were just a temporary species, one that would eventually destroy itself without anyone's help. When the Galactic Coalition gathered for their annual meeting, the topic of humans came up again. Reports showed that Earth had started building warships, though no one took them seriously. Compared to the massive fleets of the older empires, human ships looked like children's toys, small, rough, and primitive. One alien diplomat laughed and said, "They still use metal hulls. Who builds warships out of iron in this age?" The room erupted with laughter. The idea that humans were trying to stand among the great powers of the galaxy felt like a joke. But somewhere far from that shining conference hall, floating quietly beyond the edge of human-controlled space, one ship was preparing for its first mission. It was called the TSV Resolute, and though it looked small and ordinary, its crew knew it carried a purpose far greater than its size. The ship's surface was matte black, with faint silver lines tracing across its hull like veins of light. To most scanners, it appeared like a simple cargo vessel, slow, outdated, and lightly armed. But that was the point. Its mission was not to show power, but to hide it until the right moment came. Inside the control deck, the air was silent except for the hum of the engines. The crew was focused, every screen glowing softly in the dim light. They had all been chosen for this mission not because of their rank, but because of their ability to stay calm when the world was watching. The captain stood at the center of the room, watching the stars drift by. His expression was calm, almost unreadable. He wasn't a man who liked war, but he had seen enough of it to know that peace never lasted unless someone was willing to protect it. For months, they had heard rumors that the coalition fleets were moving closer to Earth's borders. Humanity had recently refused to hand over mining rights to one of the alien empires, and it had angered many powerful leaders. People across Earth hoped it was just political talk, but the Resolute's mission was clear: to stand as a warning. The ship carried something no one else knew about, not even Earth's allies. It was a weapon so advanced that only a few engineers on the planet had ever seen its blueprints. The weapon was called the Helios system, and it was designed not to destroy worlds but to stop wars before they began. But for now, the Resolute was just drifting in space, far from home. The crew had grown quiet over the past few days. They knew they might soon face something far larger than themselves. A message arrived, encrypted, urgent, and brief. Coalition scouts entering neutral zone. Hold position. Do not engage. The captain read it twice, then looked at his navigator. How long until visual contact? Maybe an hour, she replied softly. He nodded, then said nothing more. When the coalition fleet finally appeared on sensors, it was like a wall of light spreading across the darkness. Dozens of ships, silver, red, and gold, moved in perfect formation. They were built for intimidation as much as power. The communications officer's screen blinked. "Incoming transmission," she said. A moment later, a deep voice filled the control room. It was the enemy commander, confident, amused. "Human vessel, you are trespassing in controlled space. Identify yourself or prepare to be boarded." The captain didn't answer. He simply watched the view screen where the alien ships were growing larger, brighter, closer. Another message came through, this time full of mockery. "Your ship looks fragile. Did your planet send a cargo hauler to fight a war?" The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They could hear laughter in the background of the transmission, the laughter of those who thought they were invincible. The captain leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. "We are here on peaceful patrol. We will not fire unless attacked." The alien commander chuckled. "Peaceful patrol. Out here?" A pause. "You humans really don't know your place." Then the transmission cut. Outside, the fleet began to spread out, circling the human ship like predators around prey. The Resolute's scanners showed hundreds of weapon locks targeting them. Still, the human ship held its course. Silent, motionless, waiting. On board, the crew felt the tension rising. One of them whispered, "They think we're nothing." Another replied quietly, "Let them think that." The captain watched the lights flicker across the radar. "Stay ready," he said. His voice was steady, but in his chest, his heart beat hard and fast. He knew this wasn't just about their ship. The entire human race was being judged in that moment. If they surrendered or ran, Earth would be seen as weak forever. But if they fought recklessly and lost, humanity could be wiped out before it even had a chance to grow among the stars. Every second felt longer than the last. The alien ships tightened their formation. The crew waited for the first shot, the one that would decide everything. Far away, back on Earth, no one knew what was happening. The Resolute had been sent out quietly without public announcement. Only a few high-ranking officials knew that somewhere out there, one small ship was standing alone against a fleet that could darken the stars. Inside the Resolute, the engineer checked the power levels again and again. The Helios system required absolute precision. One mistake and the entire ship could tear itself apart. Energy stable, she reported. But we can't hold this charge forever. If they fire first, we might not get another chance. The captain nodded slowly. They'll make the first move, he said. They always do. Outside, the alien fleet was silent for a few minutes, as if waiting to see if the humans would beg for mercy. But when no surrender came, they began powering their weapons. Bright flares appeared on their hulls, the light of energy cannons charging for battle. On the Resolute, alarms began to beep softly. Every display turned red. They're locking on all fronts, the weapons officer said. The captain didn't blink. Hold steady, he replied. The moment stretched endlessly. Then one alien ship fired a warning shot, a bright beam that passed dangerously close to the Resolute's hull. The crew flinched, but the captain's voice remained calm. No response. Not yet. The alien commander, still watching from his command ship, smirked. See, they're frozen. Weak creatures. Another shot followed, this one closer. Then another. Inside the Resolute, the hull shook. The crew gripped their stations, the noise filling their ears. Yet no one panicked. The captain finally spoke, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Let them come closer. The crew obeyed. The ship drifted slightly forward, as if unafraid. One of the alien officers watching from the fleet frowned. They're not retreating. The commander waved it off. They wouldn't dare. They're trying to bluff. But deep down, even the aliens began to feel something strange. A sense that the humans weren't panicking as expected. Their sensors showed minimal energy readings, no shields raised, no weapon systems active. It made no sense. What are they waiting for? One asked. Inside the Resolute, the captain closed his eyes for a brief moment. He thought of Earth, the blue planet hanging quietly in the dark, full of families who had no idea what was at stake. He thought of the promise he made when he accepted the mission, to make sure humanity would never be mocked again. He opened his eyes. Prepare the Helios, he said quietly. The engineer looked up, startled. Sir, that will reveal our energy signature. I know, the captain said. It's time they see what they're laughing at. The ship began to hum, low at first, then deeper, like a storm brewing inside metal. Lights dimmed across the control deck. The crew exchanged nervous glances. On the alien scanners, sudden spikes appeared. Energy readings off the charts. The commander leaned forward, confused. What are they doing? That's impossible. That ship's too small for that kind of power. But before anyone could react further, everything fell silent again. The Resolute had stopped charging, holding its energy in stillness. The captain took a breath and whispered, Let them come closer. Outside, the fleet continued to advance, their laughter fading as uncertainty began to replace arrogance. None of them knew that within that small, dark ship, a new chapter of galactic history was about to begin. The alien fleet kept moving forward, their formation tight and bright against the darkness of space. From far away, they looked like a river of light cutting through the Black Sea. Their ships were large and powerful, built for battle. Each one carried weapons strong enough to destroy cities in a single strike. Against them, the small human warship seemed almost invisible. Inside the Resolute, the air felt heavy. Every crew member could feel the tension pressing down like weight on their chest. They all knew that in the next few minutes, history might change forever. Some kept their eyes on the screens. Others silently whispered prayers under their breath. No one wanted to be the first to break the silence. Finally, the sensors officer spoke quietly. They're scanning us again. Very close now. The captain nodded slowly, his face calm though his heart beat fast. Let them look, he said. Let them think we're weak. On the alien command ship, the mood was almost playful. The officers laughed as the human vessel appeared on their big screen. So small, so still, and so quiet. Are they even armed? One of them said with a grin. The commander smiled lazily. Barely. Their weapons are like toys. This will be over in seconds. They didn't know what was hidden behind that silent black hull. The human ship drifted closer, almost within firing range now. From the outside, it still looked fragile, like a piece of scrap metal lost in the void. But inside, the crew was preparing. The engineer's fingers moved quickly over the glowing panels. "Helios system is fully charged," she said softly. "One shot available. After that, the core will need to cool down or we'll burn out the entire drive." The captain turned to her. "Understood, but we won't fire unless they attack first. That's the rule." She nodded, though her hands were shaking slightly. "If they fire, we won't have time for a second chance." "I know," he said quietly. "So we'll make the first one count." A few moments passed. Then the alien commander opened a channel again, his voice echoing through the Resolute speakers. "Human vessel," he said mockingly. "This is your last chance. Power down your systems and surrender. You have no idea who you're dealing with." The captain looked at the dark screen in front of him, then pressed the communication button. His voice came out calm, steady, and cold. "This is the Terran ship Resolute. We are not surrendering." There was silence on the other end. Then the alien laughed, loud and long. "You people never learn, do you? Very well, human. We'll teach you how small your world really is." The transmission ended. The radar screen blinked red. "They're charging weapons," said the weapons officer. "Multiple ships." The captain's voice was quiet but firm. "All stations ready." Outside, the first flashes appeared, bright lines of plasma energy racing across the black sky. They looked like shooting stars, except these stars could kill. The Resolute shook as the shockwaves hit. Sparks jumped from one of the control panels. The lights flickered for a moment, but the crew stayed focused. "Shields holding," the engineer said quickly. "Minimal damage." Another wave of fire followed. The alien ships were testing them, firing near misses at first, almost toying with their target. They expected panic, maybe a desperate attempt to flee. But the human ship didn't move. It just floated there, taking every hit without flinching. On the alien bridge, the commander frowned. "Why aren't they running?" "They must be damaged," someone replied. "No," said another officer softly. "Their power readings. They're not dropping. Something's not right." But it was already too late to wonder. The humans had made their choice. Inside the Resolute, the captain gave a small nod. "Target locked." "Locked," replied the weapons officer. The captain's hand rested on the console for a moment. "Wait for my command." He could see the faces of his crew reflected in the dim blue light. Tired, tense, but loyal. Every one of them understood what this mission meant. It wasn't just about survival. It was about dignity. The captain took a slow breath. Then he whispered, "Fire." The moment the command left his lips, everything changed. The ship's core lit up like a rising sun. Every metal plate, every beam, every circuit seemed to tremble with raw energy. Outside, the Resolute suddenly glowed, a faint golden light that grew brighter with each passing second. The alien fleet's sensors went wild. "Massive energy spike detected," shouted one of the alien officers. "Unidentified weapon signature." "What is that?" the commander demanded. No one could answer. Then, with a flash that could be seen from orbiting moons, the Resolute fired. There was no sound in space, but if there had been, it would have been deafening. A beam of pure light tore through the darkness. Not a straight line, but a twisting, rippling wave bending everything around it. It looked like space itself was folding inwards. The first alien ships it touched vanished instantly. Not destroyed, not broken, simply gone, like dust blown away by wind. The others tried to scatter, but the wave was too fast. It passed through their formation like a silent storm, leaving trails of fire and glowing debris behind. Inside the Resolute, the lights flickered violently. The crew held onto their seats as alarms blared. "Power dropping," the engineer shouted. "Core temperature rising beyond limits." The captain steadied himself, his voice sharp. "Hold it together." Outside, the wave kept expanding, then slowly began to fade. What had been a fleet of dozens was now nothing more than empty space, scattered fragments and fading echoes of light. The alien command ship, the largest of them all, had been caught at the edge of the blast. Its hull glowed red-hot, engines failing, weapons useless. For the first time, their commander felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. He watched the small human vessel still standing in the center of the wreckage, its hull scorched but intact. "How?" he whispered. "How did they do that?" No one on his bridge could answer. The silence that followed was colder than the vacuum outside. On the Resolute, the lights slowly returned to normal. The ship's hum softened, then steadied again. Smoke drifted near the rear systems, but the ship was alive. "Damage report," the captain said. "Minor hull cracks," replied the engineer, breathing heavily. "Main power offline for the moment. But we're still here." A faint smile crossed the captain's face. "That's enough." The crew looked out at the view screen. The field of stars once filled with enemy ships now lay empty. Only glowing fragments floated slowly like dust in sunlight. No one spoke for a while. The silence was too big for words. Finally, one of the younger officers whispered, "Did we really just do that?" "Yes," said the captain softly. "And they'll remember it." He turned his gaze toward the distant stars. He knew that the message of this moment would spread faster than any signal. Across the galaxy, those who had mocked Earth would hear the story of one human ship, small and alone, standing against an entire fleet and surviving. But he also knew what it had cost them. The Helios system had drained almost everything. If another attack came now, they wouldn't last long. Still, he felt no regret. "Prepare transmission," he ordered. "Send message to all frequencies." The communications officer nodded, typing quickly. "Ready, sir." The captain leaned forward. His voice, though quiet, carried weight. "To all coalition vessels," he said, "this conflict is over. We will not pursue you. Humanity seeks peace, but we will not bow to threats. Remember that." The message was sent across every channel. Then he turned off the transmitter and leaned back in his chair. For a long time he said nothing. Out in the vast silence of space, the remains of the alien fleet drifted slowly, glowing faintly against the black background. Somewhere in that debris, small distress beacons blinked weakly. The last signals of ships that had once believed themselves untouchable. The captain finally stood, walked to the window, and looked out. The stars were quiet again, beautiful and endless. "We did what we had to," he said softly. "Not for glory. For survival." The crew nodded. No one felt joy, only deep relief, and a quiet pride that was hard to describe. The Resolute turned slowly, its engines flickering back to life. It began the long journey home, carrying the story that would soon echo across the galaxy. The story of the day when those who laughed at humanity learned the cost of underestimating them. And as the ship disappeared into the distance, leaving behind trails of faint light, the captain looked once more toward the stars and whispered, "Let them laugh again if they want. Next time they'll remember how it ended." The space around the Resolute was calm again. The stars shone quietly as if nothing had happened, as if the battle that had shaken the sky just moments ago was only a dream. But the ship's crew knew it was all real. They had seen entire fleets vanish before their eyes. They had survived the impossible. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was heavy but calm. Some crew members were still trying to process what they had just witnessed. Others worked silently, repairing damaged systems and resetting power lines. No one cheered. No one celebrated. There was only silence, a silence filled with disbelief and deep thought. The captain sat at his console, watching the faint lights blink on the control board. His face was calm, but behind his eyes 1,000 thoughts were racing. He knew the world back home would never be the same again. Humanity had just proven something powerful, something dangerous. He leaned back, his gaze drifting toward the window, where the endless stretch of stars looked peaceful again. For a moment he thought about the past, about how this mission had begun, and about the secret that the world still didn't know. The truth was that the Resolute had been built not as a weapon of war, but as a desperate shield. Years ago, before the ship ever launched, humanity had faced one of its darkest moments. It wasn't the aliens that threatened them then. It was their own fear. When humans first learned they were not alone in the galaxy, there had been both excitement and panic. The first contact had been peaceful. The alien traders who arrived in Earth's orbit came with offers. Technology, medicines, and knowledge that could change everything. But peace came with a price. The visitors demanded control over certain resources, rare minerals that Earth was still discovering. When humanity refused, the visitors left with cold smiles. Not long after, Other alien factions began to appear, each one stronger and more demanding than the last. At first, Earth tried to negotiate, but every discussion ended with the same result: laughter, mockery, and quiet threats. The galaxy saw humans as naive children trying to sit at the table of giants. Then came the day when one of those empires destroyed a human mining station near Jupiter, claiming it as a lesson in respect. Thousands of workers died in seconds. The message was clear. The galaxy didn't see humanity as equals. They saw them as insects. That single tragedy changed everything. The governments of Earth united like never before. Nations that once fought each other suddenly stood on the same side. They decided that humanity would never again be humiliated, never again be seen as weak. From that decision, Project Aegis was born. It was a secret collaboration. Scientists, engineers, and strategists from across the world gathered under one mission: to build something that could protect Earth from any power in the galaxy. Not to start wars, but to prevent them. The project operated in silence. Hidden bases were built under oceans and in the far corners of the moon. Every piece of data was encrypted and erased once completed. Most people on Earth didn't even know it existed. The heart of the project was a single idea: an energy system that could turn the very forces of space into defense. It was based on a theory once considered impossible: controlled singularity energy, something capable of bending space and light itself. For years, the scientists failed again and again. Many thought it couldn't be done. The energy kept destabilizing. The calculations always ended with collapse. But then one day, during a test deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, the experiment didn't fail. The room filled with blinding light, and for 3 full seconds the instruments recorded something that shouldn't have existed: a stable singularity core. It vanished before it could explode, but that was enough. Humanity had found its answer. That breakthrough led to the creation of the Helios system, the weapon now hidden inside the Resolute. It wasn't built as a bomb. It was built as a message, one that said, "We will not be conquered." But the project came at a cost. Many of the people who worked on it never saw their families again. The experiments were dangerous and too unstable. Several test facilities were lost during early trials. The scientists knew what they were risking, yet they kept going. They believed that if they didn't, Earth would have no future. When the system was finally complete, it needed a carrier, a ship that could hold it safely. That ship became the Resolute. Unlike the massive warships of the alien fleets, the Resolute was built to be small, agile, and quiet. It didn't need heavy weapons or large cannons. Its strength was hidden deep within its heart. Every piece of it was handcrafted, tested, and shielded to handle the power of Helios. The outer hull was designed to absorb scans and deflect radar. To anyone looking from the outside, it appeared as nothing more than a small cargo ship, outdated and slow. But those who built it knew the truth. Before the Resolute was launched, its crew was carefully chosen. Not because they were the strongest, but because they understood responsibility. They weren't soldiers chasing glory, they were guardians. Their mission was simple yet heavy: to carry the Helios system into deep space as a deterrent, to show that humanity would not kneel to threats anymore, and so they launched. Quietly. No news, no cameras, no parades, only silence. Even most people on Earth never knew a ship like Resolute existed. Now, sitting in the command chair after the battle, the captain thought about that promise. He remembered the scientists who had said goodbye to their families before vanishing into secret facilities. He remembered the engineers who said, we are building peace, not war. He remembered the faces of the people who believed that if humanity didn't stand up now, there might not be a future to protect at all. He closed his eyes for a moment, hearing the soft hum of the engines. Somewhere deep inside the ship, the Helios core was cooling down, its energy fading back into silence. The communications officer broke the quiet. "Captain, we're picking up transmissions from the coalition. Scattered signals only. They're retreating." The captain nodded slowly. "Good. Let them. They're also broadcasting distress calls," she added. "Should we respond?" He thought for a long moment. Then he said, "No pursuit. We came to defend, not to destroy." The crew understood. None of them had wanted to start a war. They only wanted to end the endless circle of humiliation and fear. As the ship drifted through the calm stars, one of the younger crew members spoke softly, almost to himself. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" The captain looked at him and said quietly, "Maybe not. But they'll never underestimate us again." The words hung in the air like a quiet truth. Far away across the galaxy, the news was already spreading. Merchant ships had recorded fragments of the battle. Deep space stations had detected the strange energy burst that destroyed an entire fleet in a single shot. Rumors began to circulate in every alien port, every outpost. They called it the human flash. Some said it was impossible, others refused to believe it. But the images didn't lie. In one night, humanity's reputation changed forever. The same civilizations that once laughed at Earth now whispered in fear about the small blue world on the edge of the Milky Way, a world that had somehow turned weakness into strength. On board the Resolute, the crew finally began to relax. Repairs continued, and the quiet sound of tools filled the corridors. In the engine room, faint music played from a small speaker, a song from Earth, simple and warm. For a few moments, they allowed themselves to smile again. The captain stood by the window watching the stars drift past. He knew this victory came with a burden. Once the story spread, more eyes would turn toward Earth, some curious, some afraid, and some eager to test humanity again. But this time, things would be different. He whispered softly, as if speaking to the stars themselves. "We didn't build this ship to destroy. We built it to be heard." And out there, beyond the reach of light and sound, the universe had heard them loud and clear. The days after the battle felt strangely quiet. The Resolute drifted through deep space, far from any planet or star, its hull still marked with the scars of the fight. Inside, the crew worked silently. They repaired damaged circuits, replaced panels, and checked every system twice. No one spoke much. Everyone was still thinking about what had happened and what it meant. They had done the impossible. A single human ship had faced an entire fleet and survived. They had seen something few could ever imagine, the power of the Helios system unleashed for the first time. The memory of that blinding light was still fresh in their minds, but with every passing hour, a new feeling began to grow, a quiet unease. The communications officer checked the scanners again. "Still no signal from Earth," she said softly. "Either we're too far out, or command is keeping the channel silent." The captain nodded slowly. "They're waiting to see how the galaxy reacts," he said. "And so are we." He looked out the viewing window at the endless stretch of stars. The beauty of space always amazed him, but now it felt different, like the silence after a storm. In the engineering bay, the Helios core was cooling down. Its surface pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat fading into rest. The engineer stood near it, watching the slow rhythm of light. She knew that the weapon was powerful, but also dangerous. One mistake, one wrong calculation, and it could destroy their ship as easily as it had destroyed the enemy fleet. The captain entered quietly. "How's it holding?" "Stable," she said, "but the core took a heavy load. We can't fire it again, not unless we want to tear this ship apart." He nodded. "Understood." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you think Command will ever let this technology out in the open?" The captain sighed. "If they're wise, they'll never build another one. The galaxy doesn't need more weapons like this." She looked at him surprised. "But it saved us." He smiled faintly. "It did. But power like this changes how people think. It makes them believe they can control everything. That's how wars begin." His words lingered in her mind long after he left. Meanwhile, on the far side of the galaxy, the coalition was in chaos. Reports of the battle had spread like wildfire. Admirals and politicians gathered in emergency meetings, arguing over what to do next. Some refused to believe that a human ship could destroy a fleet so easily. Others demanded revenge. One general slammed his fist on the table. "They used forbidden energy," he shouted. "This wasn't a normal weapon. We cannot allow them to exist unchecked." But another voice, calm, older, replied, "They didn't attack first. They defended themselves. We provoked them." The room fell silent. That single truth changed everything. For years, the coalition had seen humans as small, naive beings, emotional and unpredictable. But now, those same humans had revealed a power no one had seen before, The balance of fear had shifted. Back on the Resolute, the crew continued their journey through the empty void. Supplies were running low, and the engines had lost half their strength. They needed to find a safe place to rest, somewhere they could repair and wait for new orders. The navigator pointed to the map glowing on the screen. "There's a neutral station 2 light days from here," she said. "Old trade post. Hardly used anymore, but it has docking facilities." "Plot the course," the captain said. "Let's move." The ship began to turn slowly, its engines humming back to life. As it glided through the darkness, the stars around it seemed endless, cold and quiet witnesses to everything that had happened. Inside the control room, the crew spoke softly among themselves. One of them, a young technician, broke the silence. "Do you think the aliens will come after us again?" The captain didn't answer right away. Then he said, "They might, but this time, they'll think twice before they do." A small smile appeared on the technician's face. "Feels strange, doesn't it? Knowing they're afraid of us now." The captain looked at him for a moment and said, "Fear is a dangerous thing. It can protect peace, or destroy it." The words hung in the air, heavier than the quiet hum of the ship. Hours later, as the Resolute approached the trade station, they received a faint transmission. A voice, static-filled but urgent. "Unidentified vessel. Identify yourself." The captain replied calmly, "This is the Terran ship Resolute. Requesting temporary docking for repairs." There was a pause. Then the voice came again, this time softer, almost cautious. "Resolute. The ship from the battle?" The captain's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes. We don't want trouble. Just repairs." Another long pause. Finally, the voice said, "Docking granted. You are safe here." When they arrived, the station looked old and worn. Its lights flickered weakly, and half the docking bays were empty. As the Resolute locked in, a few workers from different alien species watched from a distance. None of them spoke. They just stared at the small, dark human ship, the ship that had done what no one believed possible. Inside the station, whispers spread quickly. "That's the human vessel," someone said. "The one that destroyed the fleet." Others shook their heads. No ship that small could do that. But when the human crew stepped out, quiet and calm, no one dared to speak against them. Respect, and a hint of fear, filled the air. The captain led his team to the supply counter. The alien clerk, a tall figure with silver eyes, avoided direct contact as he handed over the repair materials. "You'll have what you need," he said carefully. "No charge." The captain frowned. "We pay for what we take." The clerk hesitated, then said quietly, "After what you did, payment isn't necessary. No one here wants to be your enemy." The captain gave a small nod. "Then consider this payment for peace," he said, placing a small crate of Earth-made goods on the counter. The clerk accepted it without another word. While the repairs were underway, the crew took turns resting. Some sat in the station's quiet dining hall watching alien traders walk past. Others simply stared out of the large windows looking at the stars. It was strange. For the first time they saw no mockery in the eyes around them, only caution and quiet respect. Humanity had earned a place at the table of the galaxy, but not through pride, through sacrifice and courage. Later, when the repairs were done, the Resolute prepared to leave again. As the engines powered up, the captain looked one last time at the station. Somewhere deep down, he felt the weight of what had begun. The galaxy was watching humanity now, not as prey, not as fools, but as equals. Yet he also knew that equality built on fear was fragile. Peace built on destruction was dangerous. As the ship left the station, the stars stretched once more into lines of light. The Resolute moved into deep space, heading back toward human territory. The crew was tired but proud, each of them carrying a story they would never forget. Inside, the control room, the captain stood quietly looking out at the infinite dark ahead. "We proved our strength," he said softly. "Now we have to prove our wisdom." The communications officer smiled faintly. The galaxy won't forget this day. Let's make sure they remember it for the right reason, he replied. The stars ahead shimmered, their light reflecting off the ship's dark hull. For now, the universe was silent. But everyone on board knew that silence never lasted forever. Somewhere, beyond the reach of sensors and light, other fleets were already forming. Other eyes were watching Earth, some curious, some fearful, some vengeful. But the Resolute would be ready. Humanity would be ready. Because now, after generations of doubt, mockery, and fear, they had finally earned their place among the stars, not through conquest, but through courage. And as the ship disappeared into the darkness, its engines leaving a faint golden trail, one thought lingered in every heart on board, that no matter what came next, they had shown the universe that even the smallest light could shine bright enough to change everything. Months had passed since the battle that changed everything. The story of the Resolute had spread across the galaxy like a spark through dry air. Every planet, every outpost, and every trading station whispered about it. The small human ship that had destroyed an entire alien fleet with one strike. At first, many refused to believe it. They said it was propaganda, a human-made myth. But soon the truth could no longer be denied. Debris from the destroyed fleet had been found floating across sectors, melted and twisted in ways no known weapon could cause. Every piece of evidence pointed to one undeniable fact. The humans had something no one else understood. The galaxy's silence began to shift into fear. Some called it balance. Others called it a warning. But to humanity, it was survival, the only thing that had ever mattered. On Earth, the story reached the highest levels of command. In a quiet room filled with screens and officers, the captain of the Resolute stood before the Defense Council. His uniform was plain, but his presence carried weight. He had seen things no one else had seen. One of the council members leaned forward. "You're telling us the weapon worked perfectly?" The captain nodded. "It did. But it's not a weapon we should use again unless we have no choice." The room went silent. He continued, his voice steady. "We built the Helios system to defend ourselves, not to rule others. If we turn it into a symbol of power, we'll start a war that no one can win." Another council member frowned. "You're suggesting we hide our strength?" "I'm suggesting we use it wisely," the captain said. "The galaxy is already afraid. Let them stay curious, not angry." His words carried weight, and even the cold expressions in the room softened slightly. Deep down, everyone knew he was right. Outside the command building, news reporters were already broadcasting the story. Images of the Resolute flashed across giant screens. The dark, scarred ship that had changed the universe's balance of power. To many humans, it was a symbol of pride. To others, a reminder of the cost of survival. Meanwhile, in deep space, other species were reacting in their own ways. In the Outer Rim colonies, a group of alien diplomats gathered in secret. Their faces glowed in the dim light of the room as they whispered about what the humans had done. "If one small ship can do that," one of them said, "what happens when they build a fleet?" Another replied softly, "Then we will all kneel, or burn." But not all of them wanted war. Some had seen the recording of the battle, how the humans had hesitated before firing, how they had tried to communicate before defending themselves. "They didn't strike first," one ambassador said quietly. "Maybe they're not what we think they are." Her words fell into silence. For the first time in years, doubt replaced arrogance. Back on Earth, the Resolute and her crew were given a hero's welcome, but none of them felt like heroes. They walked through cheering crowds, smiling faintly, but in their eyes there was something else, something deeper. They had seen what true destruction looked like. They had felt the silence that followed it. That night, the captain stood on the observation deck of the spaceport, looking out at the stars. He could see the faint trails of ships leaving Earth, carrying goods, people, and hope into the galaxy. The engineer joined him quietly, her expression soft. "It feels strange," she said. "Everyone's celebrating, but I keep thinking about the lives that were lost out there." He nodded. "Victory always feels louder than the silence that follows it." "But silence speaks the truth." She looked at him. "Do you think peace will last?" He took a deep breath. "Peace doesn't last on its own. We have to make it last, and every single day. The next morning, orders came from command. The Resolute was to return to active duty, not for war, but as a symbol of unity. The galaxy's first peace mission, the ship that once ended a battle would now visit other worlds to open talks, build trust, and remind everyone that humans didn't want to rule. They wanted to belong. The crew was ready. Their faces showed pride but also calm. They knew that their journey wasn't about power anymore. It was about proving that humanity's strength came from its heart, not its weapons. Their first destination was a planet called Lyrath, once home to one of the enemy fleets. When the Resolute entered its orbit, tension filled the air. The planetary defense systems locked onto them instantly, but no shots were fired. The people below remembered too well what the ship could do. A message came through the speakers. "Human vessel Resolute, state your purpose." The captain answered simply, "We come in peace. We seek no war. We only ask to speak." There was a long pause. Then the voice replied, cautious but not hostile, "You may land." When the Resolute touched down, the crew stepped out slowly, unarmed. The planet's sky was red with dusk, and the ground beneath them shimmered with mineral dust. Waiting for them were the Lyrathian leaders, tall, proud beings with silver-blue skin and sharp eyes. For a few moments, neither side spoke. The tension was heavy, but then the captain stepped forward and bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect. "We fought each other," he said. "Both sides lost. Let's not lose again by repeating it." The Lyrathian leader studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You surprised the galaxy," he said. "Not just with your power, but with your restraint." The captain replied softly, "Power without control is just chaos." That meeting lasted for hours. They spoke of peace, of trade, of rebuilding trust. For the first time in decades, humans and Lyrathians shared a meal instead of a battlefield. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. By the time the Resolute left Lyrath, word had spread again. But this time, it wasn't about destruction. It was about diplomacy, understanding, and something the galaxy hadn't seen in a long time: hope. As they traveled from world to world, the crew saw changes everywhere. Planets that once banned humans now welcomed them. Stations that once ignored Earth signals now opened their doors. The galaxy was beginning to see humanity differently, not as weak, not as dangerous, but as something in between. Unpredictable, yes, but capable of greatness, and yet, deep inside, the captain knew the truth, that peace was never permanent. There would always be those who feared humanity's rise, who wanted to test their limits again. One evening, as the stars stretched endlessly ahead, he stood alone in the control room. The faint hum of the engines filled the silence. The navigator came up beside him and said, "You think the galaxy will ever stop testing us?" He smiled faintly. "No, but that's not the point. What matters is how we respond when they do." She nodded. "With strength?" "With understanding," he replied. "And if that fails, then with strength that protects, not destroys." Outside, the stars seemed brighter that night. Maybe it was just the light reflecting off the Resolute's new hull, freshly polished after repairs. Or maybe in some quiet corner of the universe, the galaxy really was changing. Somewhere out there, other fleets were watching them, still cautious, still doubtful. But they could no longer laugh. The same humans they once mocked had rewritten the story of survival, not with arrogance, but with heart. As the Resolute continued its silent voyage through the stars, the crew carried more than their mission. They carried a message, one that would echo across generations. That strength is not in the size of a fleet or the power of a weapon. Strength is in the courage to stand firm when others doubt you, and to choose peace when others demand war. And so, the legend of the Resolute grew, not just as a tale of victory, but as a symbol of humanity's spirit. A reminder that even in the vast emptiness of space, one small spark of hope could light up 1,000 worlds. The Resolute had become more than just a ship. It had become a symbol of hope. Everywhere it went, people remembered what it stood for: courage, wisdom, and restraint. But peace, as the captain often said, is fragile, like glass floating in space. It looks calm, but one small crack can shatter everything, and that crack soon appeared. It started on the edge of known space, a quiet mining world called Vornis. The planet had been neutral for years, a place where humans and aliens worked side by side to gather rare metals. But one morning, all communication from Vornis stopped. When rescue ships arrived days later, they found the colony destroyed. Buildings melted, ships reduced to dust, and no signs of life. The scanners picked up traces of an unknown energy, something no one had seen before. The galaxy began to whisper again. Was it humans? Some said. Maybe the Lorathians are getting revenge, others argued. No, one frightened voice said. It's something else. Something worse. Back on Earth, the Defense Council gathered once again. The captain of the Resolute was called in to investigate. When he saw the images of the destroyed colony, he felt a deep chill. The energy pattern didn't match any known weapon, not human, not alien. It was new and dangerous. He turned to his crew. We need to see this ourselves, he said. Set a course for Vornis. The journey took days. During that time, the crew could feel the tension building. The galaxy that had just started trusting humans again was already falling back into fear and suspicion. Every transmission they received was filled with questions and panic. When the Resolute finally arrived, the sight was haunting. The planet hung in silence, a dark sphere with faint orange cracks glowing across its surface. It looked like it was still burning from the inside. The engineer scanned the surface. The energy readings are off the charts, she said. This isn't fusion or plasma. It's something beyond that, like a wave that tears matter apart at the atomic level. The captain's brow furrowed. Could it be a weapon? She shook her head slowly. If it is, it's not from any civilization we know. As the ship orbited the ruined planet, a strange signal began to pulse through the sensors, faint, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. It wasn't random. It was a message. The communications officer worked quickly, decoding the signal. When the translation appeared on the screen, the entire room fell silent. It read, "We are the architects. Your galaxy is unbalanced. Correction has begun." No one spoke. The message repeated itself again, then vanished into static. The captain looked around the room. "Record everything. Send a copy to Earth Command." The engineer whispered, "What does that even mean?" "It means," the captain said quietly, "someone, or something, thinks they have the right to decide who survives." Within days, the message appeared across multiple star systems. The same words, the same cold tone. Entire networks went dark. Ships vanished. And everyone, human, Lorathian, or otherwise, began to realize that this new enemy wasn't like the others. It didn't want land or power or revenge. It wanted control. The galaxy that had just started healing now faced its greatest threat yet. This time, no one could fight alone. The captain of the Resolute sent a message to the coalition leaders, the same ones who had once mocked humanity. He didn't speak with anger. His voice was calm, steady, and full of purpose. "We once fought each other," he said, "but now we face something that sees us all as the same, as pieces to a race. If we don't stand together, we'll all fall apart." His message spread like wildfire. People remembered what the Resolute had done before, how it had turned fear into strength. One by one, old enemies began to respond. Fleets that once faced each other across battle lines now began to move side by side. For the first time in history, humans and aliens joined under one command, not to conquer, but to survive. The Resolute was placed at the center of this new alliance. Its crew became the heart of a growing hope, the reminder that courage was stronger than fear. As the fleets gathered near a quiet blue star, sensors picked up movement on the edge of the system. Hundreds of unknown ships appeared, sleek, silver, and silent. They didn't broadcast signals. They didn't send warnings. They just advanced in perfect formation. The Resolute stood at the front. The captain looked out at the screen. His crew waited, nervous but ready. He could see the reflection of their faces in the glass, and tired, scarred, but brave. "Send a message," he said. "What should I say?" the communications officer asked. "Tell them this. We don't seek war, but we will defend every life that values peace." The message was sent. For a long moment, the enemy ships didn't respond. Then, one of them fired. A single beam of white light that cut through space like lightning. It missed the Resolute by only a few hundred meters. The captain took a deep breath. "Shields up. All ships, hold your positions." The battle that followed was unlike any other. The unknown ships fought with silent precision, their weapons strange and terrifying. But this time the galaxy fought together. Human ships moved alongside Lyrethian cruisers and other alien vessels, covering each other, protecting each other. The Resolute's Helios system was reactivated, but not to destroy, only to shield. The captain refused to unleash it as a weapon again. Instead, he used its energy to create a massive defense barrier, protecting the entire Allied fleet. Hours passed. Explosions filled the void, and yet no one gave up. For every ship lost, 2 more took its place. For every attack, there was an answer. At last, when the enemy ships began to retreat, the Resolute stood firm, battered, smoking, but still shining. The captain watched the sensors as the strange fleet vanished back into the darkness. He didn't celebrate. He knew this wasn't victory. It was survival. The galaxy had survived once more. Together. In the following weeks, something remarkable happened. For the first time, humans and aliens began to build together, not walls but bridges. Research teams from every species studied the strange energy, determined to understand it, not weaponize it. Trade routes opened. Messages of peace were sent. And through it all, one ship remained at the center of the story. The Resolute. It was no longer seen as a weapon of fear, but as a symbol of unity. Whenever new disputes rose between worlds, people would say, "Remember what the Resolute did," and that would be enough to calm them. The captain spent his final years teaching at the Earth Space Academy. He never boasted about the battles he'd fought. Instead, he taught young cadets about balance, compassion, and strength with purpose. One evening, as he stood watching the sunset over the academy, the engineer, now a commander, joined him. "Do you ever think about that first battle?" she asked. He smiled gently. "Every day. It taught me that courage isn't about firing first. It's about standing your ground when everyone doubts you." She nodded. "The galaxy owes you more than it knows." He shook his head. "No. It owes everything to the people who chose peace when it would have been easier to choose war." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and red, the same colors that had once filled the stars during battle. But now it was calm, peaceful. Far above, the Resolute, retired and docked in orbit, glimmered softly in the sunlight. It was no longer a weapon. It was a monument, a reminder of what humanity had faced and how it had grown. Across the galaxy, new generations were told the story, not as a tale of destruction, but as a legend of hope. The story of a small human ship that faced laughter, doubt, and fear, and proved that even the weakest can become the strongest when they fight for what's right. And somewhere, in the quiet silence of space, it was said that the ship's old system still flickered to life from time to time, as if the Resolute itself remembered the moment it changed the galaxy forever. Remembered the courage that built peace from ashes. Remembered humanity, not as conquerors but as protectors. And in that endless silence among the stars, its message still echoed softly. Strength isn't in the weapon you hold. It's in the heart that decides when not to use it.